Hello and welcome to your Thursday night programming for the Book Bazaar streaming channel. I'm Belinda. I wrote The Hero Rebellion, which is having its 10th anniversary this year. It's like, wow, it's 10 years old. It's like, now I'm feeling old. Um, so, yeah, who would have thought, right? Um, but it's having its 10th anniversary. Um, as part of the Book Bazaar. We're doing some awesome things, so go check them out. Now, a disclaimer before I get into this. Um, I actually recorded, this is pre-recorded, and I actually recorded this like the other day, and I did this really, really awesome 1 hour thing where I did a couple of readings and I answered some questions and got to the end of it and realized I'd forgotten to hit the record button. And yeah, I know, right? And I was going to do it again today, but frankly, I don't have the spoons. Um, so instead of doing all the stuff that I had planned to do, and I have lots of like different plans on my screen here that sort of say, "Hey, do this." Um, we're just gonna um, we're just gonna totally wing it. I'm just going to ask some other questions, talk about other stuff. Um, hopefully you find this interesting. So I should probably tell you a little bit about the Hero Rebellion, if you haven't already come across it. It is a YA sci-fi series about a girl who discovers that she's part of an ancient conspiracy to alter human evolution. This is all happening on an alien planet far into the future, which humans have colonized. And actually, here we go. I'll do a little reading for you. Maybe we'll intersperse these readings into little bites. Um, so at the beginning of each book, I have, because we're on an alien planet far into the future, and there are things about the planet that you need to know um, in order for all these things to make sense. Okay, so instead of info dumping everything to you, I put a little kind of in the beginning page at the front of my books, just to ground you a little bit. So here is the in the beginning for Hunter, which is, excuse me, actually a prequel to Hero. And there's a funny story with Hunter, but we won't get into that just yet. So here is the in the beginning, which should tell you a little bit about the world we're on, Yawn. Some funny story about that name too. Um, and yeah, give you a bit of an idea of where we're going with this kind of story. All right, so in the beginning, humans colonize Yawn. They traveled across the galaxy intent on a better way of life, away from the influence of Earth and yapping dogs. But the drones they sent ahead, the ones that told them that Yawn was their new paradise, missed something important. The colonists arrived, settled on the surface, and started dying. Oops. The culprit, a native spore carried on every wind to every corner of the globe. Genetic engineering, blending DNA from Earth and Yawn species, saved their crops and livestock, but for humans there was no cure. Instead, they took to the skies, turning their 5 great colony ships into cities that floated above the spore's reach. Times were hard. All the resources they brought with them to start their new lives went into the fight to stay alive, as it should. They scavenged, they scrapped, they made every morsel and every scrap go as far as it could, but it was not enough. A few brave souls risked their lives to explore the planet. They scouted the surface, locating the resources the cities needed to survive, with nothing more than the thin membrane of their envirosuits and the claws of their genetically engineered steeds to keep them alive. They died in their dozens, victims of the planet's deadly wildlife and treacherous terrain. They became known as riders with capital R, legends, heroes. They did their job well, and now, 200 years after the first human set foot on Yawn, humans are beginning to thrive. The era of the riders is ending, but not just yet. Okay, so that's the in the beginning for Hunter, the first book in the Hero Rebellion. And Hunter is about one of the last of the riders with a capital R, and that is important. Okay, um, and yeah, and it's important because our main character in the Hero Rebellion, Hero, um, also wants to be a rider. It's like her driving passion because she too wishes to be able to explore the surface. She wishes to be free, to make her own decisions. And she wishes Hero, I'm talking about Hero now, not Hunter. Okay. Sorry guys, I jump around a lot. Um and she wishes to make her own, that's her wish, that's Hero's wish because she is quite sheltered. She's been told she can't do things because people think she's mentally ill. Um, and spoiler, she's not. um, yeah, it's not much of a spoiler, right? But she's got other things going on. I won't tell you what they are. You can figure those out. She got other Hero's got other things going on, and yeah, so that's that. Um, I might read a little bit more of Hunter a little bit later after I tell you some more funny stories. So remember I said there's a funny story about the name of the planet, Yawn. Yawn is actually um Norwegian. It's a Norwegian name. I think it's Norwegian. Um, I'm gonna have to look that up again because I forget. It's been 10 years and I forget these things. Okay. Um, but it's actually the equivalent of George. I named my planet George, which I knew at the time, and I find it endlessly funny. And I named it George or Yawn because one of the meanings of that is Earth. So, it seemed appropriate to name my new planet Earth with actually calling it Earth. So there you go. And um, the funny story about Hunter and the prequel was that meant to be a prequel to the Hero Rebellion and ended up being a prequel to a prequel series, which I haven't written yet, but which is coming. Anyway, that's the funny story. And so why don't I just read the next part from Hunter? Okay, we'll just read the next part because it's here and it's begging me to read it. So we'll just read from chapter 1. So Hunter's only a short, it's a novella. It's about 15,000 words. Um, and it's a little short one. And if you can grab it as part of the what do you call it? The Book Bazaar campaign. It comes part of the omnibus. And you can add it on as an ebook or as paperback. Okay, so Hunter, chapter 1. Subaru skidded around the corner, only her grip on the hangar's door jamb keeping her on her feet. Not the day to be late, Venere, Instructor Bayard yelled over the clang of cargo and the giant, shaggy cowocks lumbering across the deck. Subaru didn't have breath to yell back. She let the pound of her boots do the talking, sprinting across the cavernous hangar, dodging hover sleds piled high with supplies for the new biodomes being built on the planet's surface. It was hard to hear the thump of her heart and the heavy thrum of the shuttle's engines, but she could hear her classmates' yells, even if she couldn't make out the words. They sounded urgent, frantic almost, but there was no time to figure them out, just enough to scramble up and over a hover sled, squeeze between cargo containers, leap off the other side, and hit the deck a second later as a cowok lumbered into her path. She skidded under the beast's belly, gaining a new appreciation for its shaggy hide and 6 legs before vaulting back to her feet. I have a thing for animals with 6 legs. You will find this out. Her classmates' yells made sense a moment later. The old Morrigue Academy shuttle was lifting off the deck, the downrush of its engines making their own tornado. Bayard was standing in the shuttle's open hatch, feet spread, arms crossed, the lift of her brows and the tilt of her chin challenging Subria to push harder or fail. No way. Subria pumped her legs faster. 10 meters. The shuttle was hovering an arm's length above the deck. 7 meters to the open hatch. The hatch was waist height now. 3 meters. This would hurt. 2, chest height. 1, Subria leapt. She caught the edge of the hatch under her ribs. Breath left her lungs in a rush, pain exploding in her belly. But there wasn't time to worry about this. There wasn't time to worry about that. No time to breathe. The ground was gone and her feet were dangling in the air as the shuttle continued to rise. She hung on with her elbows, gripped the smooth deck of the shuttle with her fingers, and used every muscle in her body to inch herself forward. The instructor's shoes were right there, bulky black boots, the nano leather scratched and scarred, dominating her vision. She didn't need to see Bayard's face to feel the weight of her gaze. Didn't need to see beyond the airlock to know her classmates were there, watching, waiting. Silent now, but their tension vibrated the air. They watched, but didn't move. Help wasn't coming. On the surface, a rider had only themselves, and so she had only herself now. She slipped. For a second, the flight hangar flashed in her vision. The cluttered deck, the cargo crates, the other shuttles just a few meters beneath her feet. She could let go and survive, perhaps break an ankle if she didn't land properly, but that would be failure, and she wouldn't fail. Couldn't fail. Subria gritted her teeth and pulled herself up. The muscles in her shoulders screamed, her elbows, wedged against the sides of the shuttle airlock, ground into the metal. Her fingers scrabbled for purchase. Slowly, so slowly, every second was an hour, and her shoulder blades felt like they were going to pop out of her back, and her biceps were molten strings of stillcrete. She pulled herself up. Ribs scraping against the deck, cutting into her belly, making it harder to breathe. She didn't stop, and then she was in the shuttle, the airlock's outer hatch snapping closed, cutting out the roar of the engines and the whip of the wind. Subria flopped onto her back and stared blankly at the bulkhead, dragging oxygen back into her lungs. Then the bulkhead was gone, and she was staring past green-clad legs to arms crossed over a nano-leather coat, all the way up to Bayard's flat, dark-eyed stare. "What are you doing, Venere?" "Breathing, ma'am," she said between pants. "I don't pay you to breathe, recruit." Subria drew another breath before replying. "You don't pay me at all, ma'am." She turned on her heel. "Get off that deck." "Yes, ma'am." Subria took one last second to draw in air and rolled to her feet, ignoring the dizziness that said perhaps she needed a little more oxygen before moving. Take a beat. A memory of her daddy, his hand on her shoulder, holding her steady. She took a beat, breathed, drawing the air deep, holding it in the pit of her belly, giving it time to saturate the tissues before letting it out. Head steady, she stepped into the shuttle's main cabin. The airlock's inner door shut on Subria's heels. There were no windows in the Academy's old shuttle, but she knew when they dropped out of the shuttle bay and into the sky below Cumulus City by the lurch as they left the city's magnet behind. Subria gripped the nearest seat. A row of hard seats ran down both sides of the cabin, enough for 40 recruits, let alone the 8 that were there. A decade ago, before the new biodomes were built on Yorn's surface, the shuttle would have been crammed with recruits. The cities almost didn't need riders to scout resources anymore. The biodomes had seen to that, freeing up resources for the engineers and scientists to do things like build better shuttles. But it was Subria's dream. She didn't care about the credits or the kudos. Yorn's surface was in her blood, and spending her life in the cities, floating kilometers above the ground, many, many kilometers, wasn't. Her older sister thought she was mad, but then anything that involved dirt made Husana cringe, and her mum had stared hard at the Morrigue Academy application, expression carefully blank. but she gripped the kitchen bench hard enough to whiten her knuckles and make the hollow chef flicker. A writer, she'd said, and there'd been something in her tone that reminded Subria of brittle plasglass a second from breaking. Subria had straightened her spine. I need your signature. Her mum had looked up, and it had taken every last bit of will not to step back. There'd been fire in her mum's dark eyes, an inferno of pain and pent-up rage, of old memories and newer nightmares, nightmares Subria shared. It was enough that it should have burned through her mum's pale gold skin and seared Subria's retinas. She remembered the way sweat had trickled down her spine, the burning urge to shift her feet and to fiddle with the stylus she'd placed carefully beside her application. You know what it means if I sign this? There hadn't been a question. Supria had nodded. Yes, she'd said. Her mum's jaw had tightened, lips compressing into a thin line, and she'd stared hard at the stylus, as if she could crush it by thought alone. She snatched it off the bench. Anything but farm control, her mum had said as she signed the application. Anything but the job that had killed her dad, even if the alternative was the one responsible for the white lumps of scar tissue and the limp her mum would never talk about. Subria could live with that. And we're going to end it there. So that's just a little bit from the start of Hunter. Subria is a much different character to Hero. And that's kind of, well, obviously that's deliberate because we don't all want all characters to be Hero. When so I'm going to backtrack a second there. A lot of comments I get from readers about Hero, which has always surprised me until something kind of twigged. And was that they found Hero kind of bratty. And I must admit, possibly she does come across that way. But when I was writing her, I didn't find her bratty at all. I was just writing a character who was very forthright and didn't take any crap from anyone, and didn't really have much patience for, social niceties if it was getting in the way of what she needed to do. And it's like, that's cool. I'm down with that. Um, and so that's how I wrote her. Like, I quite like her. Most people don't. They love Fink. So Fink is Hero's companion animal. Like, Hero's Fink. Here's an artist rendition of Fink, right? Everyone loves Fink. Fink is awesome. He's like yay high. Like he's like the size of a horse. Um, and he's part rat and he's part leopard. And he's a whole heap of alien. And he's got 6 legs. Okay, I have a thing, animals with 6 legs. Or at least alien, whatever. Just I don't know. It's just a thing. Um, and Fink is kind of psychic and he loves cake. And everyone loves Fink. He's this massive, big, cuddly teddy bear who will kill anything that threatens you. Okay, but he's a big, cuddly teddy bear who loves cake. Yeah. So everyone loves Fink. And most readers don't really jive with Hero. Um, but Hero gets shit done, right? She's my kind of girl. Uh, and it's only kind of recently that I realized um why I'd done that. And if you too are alternatively wired, uh, I hope you like the cat Hero too. I hope know what's going on there. Um, so yeah, uh, yeah, I always found that funny. But yeah, and also I had this great comment recently from someone who was rereading Hero, and they were talking to me about it. As we're coming up to the 10th anniversary, they're rereading Hero. And about AI. There's a lot of AI, like not generative AI in the creation of Hero, because Hero was written before the whole generative AI, Chatty and Claude and all that kind of jazz. But there is a lot because we're in the future. All right. And when I was writing Hero, I was going, there's going to be AI. We're going to get stuff done. It's going to be efficient. And part of the whole Hero series, part of that world, part of Yawn, is obviously you've got networks and we're all interconnected and they're various different AIs. But the biggest one is called the Planetary Librarian. It's an AI and it basically is a librarian, in that it catalogs all of this information and makes it available in the planetary networks. So it's a librarian and it's called the librarian. And it's, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but it's a big thing in the series. Um, and um, a lot of what drives the main plot has to do with AI, particular AI. That's a bit of a spoiler. Um, for various reasons. And um, yeah, I just had someone recently say, yeah, that was like, how did you think of that way back then? I'm like, well, it was only A, it was only 10 years ago. Um, and B, how could you not think of that? But yeah, I guess I've just as watched a lot of science fiction and, um, intelligent robots and, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. There you go. Nice little segue. I'm not segue, but aside. And speaking of readers and things they've been telling me, um, had a few questions. I've actually asked people if they had any questions, and a few people have said yes. And I'm going to answer some. So the biggest one, okay, was why isn't Fink on the cover of any of my books? Um, that is because it is hard to create a rat leopard alien six-legged dude. Like this is an awesome illustration by an awesome woman called Rose Hammer. Um, Fabulous artist. And it's lovely. It's black and white. It doesn't really suit the kind of covers like House of War up there. Or up here. This is Subria. This is actually the original name and cover for Hunter before it was actually published. Um, and you might kind of, this might seem a bit familiar if you look at some of the Nexus editions. Maybe, I don't know. It does. Just, I'm just telling you it does. Um, so yeah, that kind of illustration doesn't really suit that particular style of cover. And I do my own covers. Um, I use Photoshop. I use what's called photo manipulation, and I take stock imagery and I kind of think of it like a collage on steroids. I kind of whoosh. There's actually I've actually got a little video showing how some of that whooshing, um, when I was flipping over the face in the Hero expanded covers for the Nexus edition. The dust jackets have expanded covers of um the current covers. It's like it's a thing, all right? Go have a look at it, all right? And then the underside, so the hardcovers have the dust jacket, which has got one design on it, and then underneath the dust jacket, there's a new design that looks on a bit like this. Anyway, and yeah, so I do my own designs. I mash photo images together, and finding the rat leopard alien thing, that's hard. And I, yeah, I'd have to pay someone a lot of money to do that. And the funds haven't made themselves available. Like the funding fairies haven't made themselves available for that. And apologies for the dinging. I haven't muted everything quite as well as I thought. um, so so yeah, that's why Fink isn't on the cover. I would love to have Fink on the cover. I would love to have like this 3D model plushy, you know, articulated Fink, be able to, crawl around my desk. That would be so awesome. But again, those fairies haven't come and done those things for me yet. So it should be on the cards one day, when the fairies decide to land. And if you want to know how I design a cover, it's a lot of head banging, as I try to find the appropriate photos to put in my collage on steroids. If you, like I said, if you want to have a look, I will put a link. There's a link. There is the link. Hopefully I can get is the link. You can have a look at it. That's just me putting a new face on Hero for those dust jackets. You can have a bit of a look there. And what else? I had some questions that have absolutely nothing to do with Hero or writing or books or anything. I don't know books. So this is earlier this year. I did these school workshops. I went to schools, and we did some writing workshops. And I have a some couple of questions about how I went with those. Um, One of them was, what was the biggest surprise I had when interacting with my readers, particularly the younger ones? So I did workshops for primary school kids and high school kids. Um, and primary school kids are darker than you think. It's like, it's lovely. I love it. They're my kind of minds. They're just a little bit darker than you think they are. It's like, we were talking about, we had a collaborative kind of 1 hour telling story, creating a story together. And we had arranged marriages and running away from arranged marriages to get married to someone else, so you didn't have to have an arranged marriage, and um people like assassins and people dying, and it was deliciously dark. It was a lot of fun. Once you get kids going, even in groups, they just roll. It's awesome. Uh, Another question, and this kind of applies not just to workshops, but whenever I'm talking to readers or just anyone really, and we're spitballing ideas. So were there any ideas that came out of these workshops from myself or the participants that I'll be incorporating into future stories? And this is a bit of a trick. I'm always really, really cautious. For the most part, not from participants. I don't. Participants may, so people, when we're talking about these crazy stories with the arranged marriages and all that kind of jazz, um, uh, we talking about them, and they might spark a separate idea in my head. But I probably won't take those ideas, because people can be very, very precious about their ideas. Um, and they, you can get into trouble, um, for stealing someone else's idea. Um, so my own thoughts on people stealing other people's ideas. Honestly, I don't really care if I have an idea and I'm telling you nitty gritty details of it, and you decide to go write your own version. Because for me, it's, you're taking that idea. Ideas, for me, ideas are cheap. Ideas are free. Ideas come from all over the place. And even though you might take the same idea as me, um, you're never going to write it the same as I do. You're always going to bring your own experience to that idea and write it your way. So feel free to take my ideas and write them however the way you want to write them, and I don't care, because it still won't be what I write. Um, and as an aside, as we're kind of already touched on AI previously, um, you know, I think an AI can take my idea and try and write it. I don't think it's ever really going to express it. Well, no, now that I've said that, maybe it could. I don't know. But until technology improves, there's my caveat. Um, I doubt it's ever going to really express itself the way I express myself. I said that now, haven't I? That seems dangerous. Anyway, okay, cool. Moving on from the to less dangerous topics. Um, if I This is another question. If I ever had an opportunity to have a book translated into another language, what would it be and why? German. Why? Because science fiction and fantasy are huge in Germany. There we go. That's a purely marketing thing. And as for other language, whoever wants to read them, you know, that'd be cool. I don't, I don't necessarily have a preference. Um, Maybe Hindi because they have a huge book market in India as well. So, you know, I'm just gonna go for the one that's gonna have the most chance of making those little fairies come and give me the Fink. Okay. Any other questions do I've got lagging around here? One. Okay. This one needs a little bit of context. Um, so there is this awesome book talker. I think she's also on Instagram. She's also on YouTube. Her name's Liz Shipton, and she does these she's a YA sci-fi author, so totally my jam. Um, and she wrote this. She's an amazing writer. I have started reading her work, and this is total, sorry guys, total tangent. Um, I've started reading Liz Shipton. I have started reading her work, and amazing writing, fabulous writing, and I couldn't finish reading it because it was just like it was it was just making me which is the sign of an awesome writer, guys. So totally go check her out. But she writes dystopian fiction, and dystopian fiction and I don't get along just because I have excellent imagination and my brain likes to do like men basically likes to start prepping for the zombie apocalypse. So I'm really careful about what kind of dystopian fiction or media I consume because I don't need to stay up at night prepping for zombies. Um so yeah, so go check her out. It's awesome. But she also does this what do you call it? These little reels and they're really funny. Um she's got a little brown paper bag and she's like, so you want to be a YA author, you're going to need, or you want to write a YA book, you're going to need heroin, dragons, and like a paper bag. And she's bringing all of these kind of ideas out of the brown paper bag. And one day, it's a little tiny brown paper bag. And one day she did one about, so you want to be an author and you're going to need to write, you're going to need to market, you're going to need them there and there. And I was just telling a friend about this. We've got this. So now we've got this thing about our brown paper bags and how many things are in the brown paper bags. um, and so um, this question is one from this friend who we have this in joke about the brown paper bag, which is pretty much like Mary Poppins carpet bag. And if you don't know Mary Poppins and her carpet bag, Google it. You're missing out, okay? And so yeah, there's a lot of stuff in my brown paper bag. Um, all the things, all the things that an author needs to do to be an author, and stuff. Um, and encourage the fairies to come and make Fink fairies to come. And but next on my list, the fun stuff. Next on my list, I finished writing the first book in a new epic fantasy series beginning of the month, and I've sent that to my editor, and I'm waiting for that to come back. And in the meantime, I am finishing off book 2 in Demons and Battle Skirts, which is this one right there. In that series. I finished book 2 in that series. Hopefully I can get done by the end of the year. That would be awesome. I'm crossing fingers and touching wood that that's going to happen, because usually things come along and they just go woof, and then go my plans. Um, and so those are the fun things. Everything else is just boring. I got more crowdfunding campaigns planned for next year. I've got to do those. Just check that out, by the way. And other stuff, awesome stuff. So yeah, stuff, lots of stuff in the brown paper bag. Cool. So those are the questions. Um, I have actually been teasing, as part of this campaign, a preview for the Hero War. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, guys. I'm glad you're with me so far. And I'm gonna try not to make this too confusing. So at the beginning I read you a excerpt from Hunter, the prequel for the Hero Rebellion, which happens 70 years before the Hero Rebellion series. Now we got the main trilogy. We got Hero, Ribbon, Regan, and that's the Hero Rebellion trilogy, my debut trilogy, which is, we're doing like the campaign for this at the moment, with all the sexy stuff. And when I finished writing um, the Hero Rebellion, I kind of had this image of like, the Hero Rebellion was just going to be a trilogy. That was it. It was no more. Okay. But as happens, because ideas breathe like rabbits, or plot bunnies. And as happens, I had an idea and I just wanted to explore Hero as an older character. Um, and her and Fink, I just had this image of them like being freaking awesome on some kind of battlefield, and then just like, yes, here we are. You know, flag and like, whatever, that kind of stuff. And I had that image in my head, and that was never going to happen in the Hero Playing, because this was never going to happen. Um, but then, so I had that image, and then the idea for the Hero War just evolved. Um, and so the Hero War happens 20 or so years after the Hero Rebellion, and I've started writing it, but I'm honestly probably not going to finish like the first book until like 2027 at the earliest. So don't hold your breath. But I've started writing and I kind of know what happens. And if you've read another one of my series, the Echo series, which is also set in this kind of same kind of world as Hero, but it takes place 200 years after the rebellion, and takes place in space. Okay. And there are some sneaky kind of Easter egg drops in the Echo series about what happens with Hero, and the Hero War. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they're freaking awesome. They're just like, yes. Anyway, so that's going to happen. But the Hero War happens, yeah, 20 or so years after the Hero Rebellion. And I'm not, like, again, I'm not going to give you spoilers, but if you've read the last book in the Hero Rebellion, Regan, specifically the last couple of chapters, because that's where all the stuff goes down, you would, stuff happens, okay? And the Hero War deals with what happens basically in the aftermath. So Regan happens, we have the characters have 20 years for the world to shift and settle and changes to happen. And then we have the Hero War, which is where the consequences of the Hero Rebellion go. Okay. Now, I love explosions. I said at the beginning, 'cause explosions are the best. Whether they're actual explosions or metaphorical explosions, they are awesome. So, in fiction, just in fiction. Um, so yeah, the Hero War is the explosion, the metaphorical explosion that happens due to what happens in the Hero Rebellion. I hope you guys are still with me because that could be confusing. Okay, so I'm actually going to do it like a little kind of reading from the Hero War, book one in Hero War, which is called Pariah. And I'm planning 4 books for the Hero War, and they've all got names, just so you know. But the first book in the Hero War is called Pariah, and so this happened 20 or so years after Regan. Hero's gone from she's a teenager, she's about 15 by the time the Hero Rebellion ends, so now she's like 35. Um, and she's been out there doing stuff for the past however many years, growing up, coming into herself, and yeah. So um, this is from chapter 2. I was going to read from chapter 1, but then I read it through and like, yeah, I'm not entirely happy. So this is a work in progress. Uh, I actually started writing this in 2022, 3 years ago. Um, and that's yeah, that's how long this has been happening for a while. Anyway, so chapter 2. All right. This is going to be harder than it needs to be if you don't vocalize, Timon said. Now, before I get into this, Hero's telepathic. That's a spoiler, kind of, but whatever. Hero's telepathic, okay? Most of her dialogue in here is actually all of her dialogue in this chapter is telepathic. Um, Timon is also telepathic, just so you know. Okay, so is this Fink. All the characters in Hero are telepathic. The only one using actual words is Timon. Now I got that clear. So let's start this again. Pariah, chapter 2. This is going to be harder than it needs to be if you don't vocalize, Timon said. You're assuming we're going to find someone to talk to. She stepped into him, and this time Timon moved back. She gave Fink a mental nudge. The ruck part grumbled but stood, leaving fore, then mid-quarters, heaving fore, then mid-quarters and hindquarters upright with a groan. And why wouldn't we? There's a whole city up there that's been ignored and vilified for almost 2 decades. You think they like living in quarantine? Timon said. No, I just think they all know my face. Going on to Fink's back, the face of doom. Scene break. The city was not itself, not the self she remembered. What had been bad from the outside was worse once she was in it. Fink shifted under her, the ruckpad's long ground-eating strides shorter and slower in the dark confines of Cumulus City's underbelly. Some of that was down to the cramped, narrow corridors with their tight turns, the centuries-old lifts that had been made for humans, not pards, but they left those behind half an hour ago. Now they moved through the city itself, the block-sized towers so tall and so jammed together that they cut out the sky. They wound their way across plazas, through arcades, and over the sky bridges strung between towers, crossing the great caverns of darkness falling away between the buildings. It was too dark. That's what it was. Even this far down, in the lower reaches of the twilight, the city shouldn't have been this dark. Where were the hovers filling the sky lanes with bright zipping lights, the taxis with the huge yellow T's projected over and under them? Where were the hollow boards shouting slogans for hair meds and insta-meals? Where were the people? Where was the noise? She could hear her own breathing, the snick-snick of Fink's claws, The hum of electricity running through power conduits, the gentle buzz of Timon's hoverbike, its sleek lines made bulky by the bags piled on its sides and back. She could hear so much, and it wasn't right, wasn't good. It made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up and her stomach churn. Not even the scans playing out on the HUD projected from the clear plexiglass dome of her helmet made her feel any better. The only things to move were the bright white dots of herself and Timon, his bike's headlamp lighting up the sky bridge in front of them. The long tunnel should have been filled with lights, if not from hollowads leaping off the straight, rectangular sides to ambush passer-by, then from the traffic passing over and under the sky bridge. Instead, there was the dull, grey-white glow of lights embedded in the floor, and the dark, yawning mouth of the building at the other end. In the back of her mind, Fink rumbled. He did not smell danger, he said. Only bad food and the black, leaky stuff. An image accompanied the thought of oily, midnight-coloured fluid trailing down the side of Hero's old shuttle. Grease, she said, even as she kept scanning the tunnel's mouth, unease still crawling over her skin. It's grease. Black, leaky stuff. She didn't need to see his face, though he wrinkled his muzzle in distaste. Bad smell. She only half heard him. The darkness at the end of the tunnel. She couldn't shake the sense that it reached for her, its arms wide, waiting to swallow her whole. On the map, another arcade stretched ahead of them, the long, wide corridor cut through the mid-level of the Sky Tower, a warren of smaller, windier corridors branching off it. It should, at least, be partially filled with shops and people, groceries and clothes and restaurants, a few cleaning bots, maybe even police. But not only was her scanner clear, a deeper, wider scan of her telepathy found nothing, not even the metallic chitter of a roach. Nothing except that crawling sensation. Hera leaned back in the saddle, and under her, Fink halted. Timon. He was further in front than she thought, 90 meters according to her HUD. Just another 108 until he hit the arcade. She stretched her mind and tapped his mental shoulder. Stop. He kept moving, not even straightening from his lean over the bike's body. He'd heard her, though. She felt it in the mental feedback, a kind of twitch against her forehead. Timon, she said, urgency colouring her words. There's something wrong. My HUD's clear. His voice sounded behind her ear. And I'm not picking up any mental traces, human or otherwise. Still, if you want to have a conversation, vocalize. The creeping sensation drew goosebumps along her arms and made her back of her neck crawl. Fink shifted under her, muscles tensing as tension tightened her grip on his sides, and the trepidation tiptoeing down her spine finally impinged on his senses. Timon! The mental shout reached him. She knew it did, felt the twitch of his acknowledgement, but he didn't respond. Didn't even hunch his shoulders at the strength of her shout, rolling further over the bike's engine. He buzzed along, oblivious. Just 18 meters between him and the arcade. Trepidation cramped her stomach. Fink growled. He did not sense anything. Hero didn't either, but there was something there waiting for them in the darkness, ready to leap. 3 meters between Timon and the dark. They didn't have time for this shit. The power came from her belly, a different kind of strength rising through her bones, blurring the edges of her vision as the real world slipped away in the éther, the mental plane where telepaths like herself ruled, overlaid the physical world. It wasn't a complete merging, just enough to shrink space and slow the flow of time. Seconds became minutes, and the 117 meters between her and Timon became the mere stretch of an arm. Part of her, the part that wasn't still sitting on Fink, stood beside Timon, gloved hand gripping his shoulder, staring hard into his eyes. The other part, the part 100 meters back, ignored the hair rising around Fink's ruff, the snarl pulling back his lips. There wasn't time for politeness, for niceties, for Timon to get his head out of his ass and listen to her. The crawling darkness waited just beyond the cone of the hoverbike's light. She reached into his brain, slipped past the first of his mental defenses, the outermost shield that prevented his thoughts from spilling willy-nilly into the world, and said, Stop. He stopped, fingers cramping in the bike's hollow controls, shoulders and jaw and back locking up. every muscle seeming to vibrate with the force of her mental command. In the éter, Timon looked at her, his black-brown gaze shining with anger, disbelief, and betrayal. Time restarted as Hero let the éter go, if not for if not her hold on Timon's mind. Fink's snarl ripped the air, whipping his head around to snap at her toes, anger vibrating his sides. She kicked him forward. Reluctantly he obliged, his usual smooth gait a choppy stalk, a growl rumbling in his chest. That wasn't right, he said. I had to do it. No, she didn't. Ooh, and that's what I've got written for chapter 2. Um, so yeah, I thought in this one, in the Hero War, Hero's spent a lot of time by herself, and she's telepathic. And she's been talking telepathically, so she's not vocalizing. She's just talking to everyone telepathically, and that's what she's doing. And I thought that was cool. I like that. Um, and so that whole thing, where she reaches out. So basically, Hero's like a mega powerful telepath, because why not, right? Um, and again, this is spoilers. I shouldn't be telling you this, but it's whatever. We're here now. And she can basically reach out and make you do stuff. So yeah, that was cool. Righty-o. Well, that's what I've got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, um, drop on over to the Hero 10th Anniversary campaign. Drop a comment in the community section, and let me know. You can always, shoot me an email, belinda@belindacrawford.com. Always happy to answer questions. And, and yeah, so if you haven't already, go check out the Hero 10th Anniversary campaign. Get yourself a lovely, blingy, dust jacketed hardback. The 10th Anniversary edition's coming in both individual hardbacks and also an omnibus. And the omnibus includes Hunter. It includes a couple of other novellas, including a little short story which kind of bridges Hunter and Hero. Um, and yeah, and it's also got like lots of commentary from me in the margins. It's really cool little gather little a little set. So the individual hardcovers also have the commentary and bits and bobs. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, I will see you around. Have a great day.